Hello folks and welcome to our game. Myself, Shane Davison. Michael Verney will be along in a little while, maybe just after 1. So I'm delighted to say I suppose at this stage, former Slaugthneil and former Tyrone hurling manager Mickey McShane with me. Mickey, how are things with you?
Yeah, all good, Shane. All good. Just looking forward to Christmas and putting the feet up now.
Yeah, I mean, like it's been 9 years with Slaugthneil, less with Tyrone, of course, but you know, you've had a huge amount of time taken up with those over the last number of years. Is it, I don't know, do you have a team lined up already or whatever, but like, is it just weird having a bit of downtime?
Yeah, it is actually, because especially the last 3 years, I've been going constantly because you go into the inter-county season with Tyrone, you come out of that straight into the club season with Slaugthneil and continue on then when that ends. So this week, the last couple of weeks have been quite strange. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's nice to just put the feet up and watch a bit of Champions League football, or take the kids to their football training and hurling training, etc. I have to say I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and like, are you based in Ballycastle or where are you based?
Yeah, I live in Ballycastle, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. One of my own club mates from Coola, Keane Waldron, he's up there hurling away. Hopefully, he can give me some bad reviews.
He just lives around the corner from me, yeah.
Does he? Yeah. He's some man to yap, isn't he? But I was going to say, like, can you talk to us about finishing up with Slaugthneil there? Obviously, you know, brilliant journey, collecting those Ulster titles, the whole lot, and you know they've won 11 titles in a row in Derry in a row at this stage. But like, what was it like when you finally just said, okay, you know, I've come to the end of the road as I see it? I presume that was very difficult to walk away from.
Yeah, it was the most difficult sporting decision I've ever had to make, because when you say 9 years, when you actually say it, it sounds like an awful long time, but for me it didn't seem like that. You know, it passed in a blink, and probably because I was enjoying it so much, and I was still enjoying it, but I had a gut feeling that maybe now was the time for a change for all parties. You know, for this group of players that I've managed, who I just couldn't speak highly enough of. Maybe they just need a fresh voice and a fresh impetus to drive them back up to where they want to be. Maybe unknown to me, I've maybe become stale with it. I didn't feel like that, but maybe that can happen. So I just had a gut feeling that this was the right time to sever the ties, and to step away. And you know, you always want to. They say, you know, you take on a job, you want to leave it in a better place, and I like to think I've done that. We may have lost the last 2 Ulster finals, but you also want to be leaving with people, you know, shaking your hand and patting you in the back rather than chasing you down the road. So it just felt right, but it was so difficult. I mulled over it for a week. One day I was staying, next day I was leaving, but I finally made the decision and contacted the chairman, and let him know, and then contacted the players. And you know, I made the decision and contacted them last Saturday. Saturday night was very, very surreal because it just seemed very strange not to be the Slaugthneil manager anymore.
Yeah, and of course you would have been eyeing up being out again this weekend, but for the Ulster final didn't go your way. What do you think? How much of a factor was it that you hadn't played a competitive match for? Was it something like 12 weeks, give or take?
Yeah, it was 11 weeks from the Derry final to the Ulster final. And listen, you know, I've been very careful what I say, you know, since the Ulster final, because I don't want to take away from Cushendall's victory. They were by far the better team on the day, and thoroughly deserved their win, and played superbly. But you can't hide from the fact that 11 weeks of non-competitive action will impact you. I would safely say that Cushendall semi-final against Portaferry prepared them in order for them to put in the performance that beat us, because they had the rust blown off. They got sharpened up. They got match sharpened. And I mean, the talk was that we were all over the country playing challenge games against teams, and we couldn't get games. We got one game 4 weeks out from the Ulster final when we played Gorey down in Abbottstown. And other than that, we could not get another game. I spoke with every manager of every senior hurling team that was still playing hurling in the Munster, the Leinster, and even St Thomas's once they won the Galway. And for one reason or another, we just could not get any more games. So we were very reliant on in-house games, and as good as our panel is, that type of preparation doesn't prepare you for what was coming in an Ulster final. So it had a factor. It played its part, absolutely no doubt about it. It's the way it is. It's the system that beat us more than anything else. I don't know how we fix that, because in Ulster there is only 3 counties that are playing senior level. But as I say, I wouldn't for one second want to take away from Cushendall's victory.
Yeah, and we will come back to them. But I suppose that's, in a microcosm, is the challenge for Ulster hurling, and has been for 100 years, isn't it? Just the accessibility to playing regular games against other teams that they want to pit themselves against.
Yeah, absolutely. Geographically, we're isolated, and I was talking to a club manager in Leinster and trying to organise a challenge game with him, and he was saying to me, "No, look, we're playing a game this Thursday night against such and such." So it's so much easier for clubs down there, even in midweek, to be able to scoot across the county borders and or go an hour down the road and be able to play a game under lights and get that type of challenge. For us, that has to be on a weekend. It has to be a Saturday or a Sunday. And over the years, preparing for All-Ireland semi-finals, for Ulster finals, etc., we've had to travel at great expense right down to Wexford and Cork and Kilkenny and places like that, and where you have to stay overnight. And as I say, that creates a great burden on the club, but it's the only way you can get the type of games that you need to prepare for what's ahead of you. So we have that geographical isolation. I mean, that's also prevalent in the inter-county scene as well, and something which I think is holding Antrim back, in their quest to become a sort of a top 8 inter-county hurling team. So, but what do you do about it? We can't do anything. We just have to try and make the most of what we have.
And then just one other question about Slaugthneil then. Is the dual thing a help in terms of like one code pushing the other, or like from your point of view, are you like, well, if I had these players every single week and I could coach them up the way I want, and if you had, Chrissy McKaig and Shane McGuigan and all these boys all the time, like would Slaugthneil be kicking on even more in hurling?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, if we had the current Slaugthneil panel for 12 months of the year playing hurling, I have no doubt that they would be a vastly superior team to what they are now, and that says something, because they're a fabulous hurling team. And I think, Shane, what it raises is, when you look back at the likes of 2016, 2017, I think only in years to come will people realise just how much of a big thing it was for Slaugthneil to win an Ulster Club Hurling and Ulster Club Football Championship in the same year, 2 years in a row. Because ultimately, I've no doubt that the shoe being on the other foot, that the football would have been more successful if hurling didn't exist. But these guys want to play both, and they're very, very talented at both. They've been very, very successful at both. But I have no doubt that we would be a much better hurling team if we were just playing hurling. If you think about Cushendall, for instance, and Slaugthneil in the Ulster final this year, if you take someone like Neil McManus or Paddy Burke or Owen Campbell, look at the amount of hurling they've done this year with Antrim. Then they come out at the inter-county scene and they go into the Antrim Championship and the Antrim Leagues, and they play a lot more hurling. And then they get to prepare with an Ulster semi-final. So when they get to play in the Ulster final, if you compare that with the amount of hurling that Shane McGuigan, Brendan Rodgers, Chrissy McKaig, Paul McNeil, and I'm only naming those 4 guys because they play for Derry Senior Football. If you compare the amount of hurling that the Cushendall lads have done in comparison to the Slaugthneil lads, I would say it would be a ratio of 3 or 4 to 1. So you are behind the black ball straight away. But again, it also highlights just how incredible the Slaugthneil players have been and the success that they've had over the last few years, to be doing that against that prevailing one.
And can I ask you then about Tyrone? Where's Tyrone hurling going? Like, what sort of journey did you have in your 3 seasons?
I had a great journey with them. When I joined Tyrone, I think I said it publicly that I believed they were punching below their weight, and that with the right organisation and the right commitment from all parties, that they could strive to be at a higher level. And so it turned out to be. We won the Nicky Raggard and got into the Christie Ring. We won promotion from Division 3 to Division 2B. And then last year we were able to consolidate our place in both those competitions. I think Tyrone hurling's in a good place. Stephen McGarry, who was my coach in Tyrone, has taken over the management job. And Stephen's a great lad. He will drive it on. It could be a difficult this year because 1 or 2 players have retired, and maybe just at the moment there isn't that quality of player coming through. But there is a big emphasis on the underage structures, the under 17, the under 20. The under 20s are currently in working and training with the seniors, which will help to raise the standards. And I have to say that the Tyrone County Board, unlike some other county boards, apparently, the Tyrone County Board are very supportive in trying to drive hurling forward.
And then, I suppose I wanted to ask you about what happened with Damien Casey. Just Shock lost his life when he was out on holidays, and this is Tyrone's best player, arguably of all time, and just the shock and what that was like as being manager of the county team, and just knowing the guy passing away, and then of course you're trying to pick up the pieces of the team that's left.
Yeah, just an extremely difficult period, Shane. You're dealing with so many things. Firstly, I became very friendly with Damien. Damien was the reason I went to Tyrone. Conversation started with him, and he convinced me that was the right thing to do. That there was a level of player and commitment there. If I came along, he was my captain the first year, and he became a confident someone I would have leaned on or lent on throughout the first 2 years. And so you're dealing with the loss of someone you felt fairly close to. Then you're dealing with the loss of a player in the group, and that could have been any player. And then you're dealing with the loss of the player that everybody looked up to, and he was undoubtedly the best player Tyrone have ever produced. Damien Casey would have graced any team in Ireland, and I say that sincerely because he had it all. He could go up through the gears when he needed to, which he showed in the Nicky Raggard final when we won it. He scored 14 points. He put on an exhibition in Croke Park, and he had the physicality, he had the golden wrists. He could have played for anyone. And so you're trying to deal with that loss, and then you're trying to set aside your own feelings and try to manage the group's feelings and try to organise to make sure that they're getting looked after. And then, the most important thing of all, you were trying to think of the family, for Damien's parents and his sisters and how they were feeling. And it was just an awful time. It was an awful time, Shane, and something I hope I never have to go through again or repeat. Mm-hmm. And then, once that, sort of you got through that initial grieving period, and then the season was coming around again. But there was a great response from the Tyrone players. They wanted to go out and represent Damien more than they wanted to represent themselves or represent Tyrone. They wanted to represent Damien. And we had a very, very emotional night down in Dungannon when we played our first National League game against London. And not surprisingly, our best performance of the year. We beat London that night, and it was just all about representing him and what he meant to the players, and just a horrible and difficult time.
Yeah, without doubt, and it's one that touched people across the country. Can I ask you about Antrim then, and just where you feel like Antrim hurling is going? Because we've seen some great snippets in the last few years, but with Neil McManus retiring, and then I think it's 5 other players, including 4 Dunloy players, opting out for next season, it could be a difficult year for Darren Gleeson.
Well, it certainly has made it a more difficult year for Darren than it would have been had them lads been playing. Neil's obviously a massive loss. not just from his hurling ability, but from his leadership skills and what he brings to the whole group. The lads who have stepped away, the Deloy lads who have stepped away, and I believe Joe Maskey has also stepped away, are a big blow. I mean, no team can lose the caliber of player of Keelan Malloy, for instance. He's a fabulous player. He's a scoring machine. And Antrim, again, I don't think right now we'll have that caliber of player to come in and replace him. But listen, that's the cards that have been dealt. And no doubt Darren that's the way he'll be thinking. He'll get on with it. There's other players within Antrim club scene who are probably ready to come into the panel and show what they can do, and they'll get their chance now, and it's up to them to step up to the plate. But it's going to be a difficult year for Antrim hurling if them lads are all missing for the duration of the whole season. I hope some of them will come back. I want to see Antrim keep going forward like they have been doing. The last few years playing in Division 1, winning the Joe McDonagh and getting up into the Leinster Championship and the Liam McCarthy has been great for Antrim. And we want to see that continue and make progress from the point we're at now, rather than just trying to survive all the time. We want to see it pushing on. But yeah, undoubtedly, Shane, it's going to be very, very difficult with those lads missing.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose I just want to throw it out to the viewers. We're going to be talking about Ballygunner against St. Thomas's in a little while, but here's some potential matchups that we're looking forward to this weekend. So I'm just wondering, do people think there's anything in particular that might be tasty? Will Fintan Burke pick up Desi Hutchinson, Kevin Mahoney, or Patrick Fitzgerald? I mean, take your pick. At the other end, will Conor Cooney try and go up against Philip Mahoney? So get your comments in on that. We'll come back to that game in a little while, but and I'll ask you about that too, Mickey. But O'Loughlin Gaels against Cushendall. Like in the last couple of years, you've got Cushendall who beat Sarsfields back, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago now in the All-Ireland semi-final. They lost in a Piercing in the final. You had Dunloy last year, shocking St. Thomas's. So, what sort of mindset do you think Cushendall will have going into this game against O'Loughlin Gaels, who obviously brilliantly won that Leinster final against Defina?
I think Cushendall will be really relishing the challenge that's ahead of them on Sunday. They played superbly well against Slaugthneil in the Ulster final. It was their best performance of the year. And to me, they look like a team that are hitting peak form at the right time. They'll have taken a lot of confidence from the Ulster final one. They were probably rocked a wee bit in the semi-final by Portaferry. Maybe the eye had been taken off the ball there, but they got through, and then they produced a very good performance to beat Slaugthneil. So they'll be looking forward to this. They're ready. They're sharpened, and I think, Shane, that this will be a game that will go to the wire. But I think Cushendall will get over the line here. I think they're going to win this game and go to the All-Ireland final. Really?
Because you'd look at it, and I'm there thinking, okay, what sort of matchups are we going to see? And I'm thinking maybe Neil McManus against Hugh Lawler. And I think Neil McManus has been brilliant, and Christy McKay had a tough time on him in the Ulster final. But I'm thinking Lawler's arguably the form full back in the country, and he's young in his peak years, and McManus is going to have a game of games to really make that impact that he normally would. Then can Joey McLaughlin make the same impact if Mikey Butler's on him, for example? And I'm just wondering, where will Cushendall get the scores in this game? That's where I'd have my concern for them.
Well, don't underestimate Neil McManus. He's playing super hurling at the moment. He was unreal in the semi-final against Portaferry. He single-handedly pulled Cushendall out of the fire. He may have been retired from inter-county hurling this year, but he's playing some of the best hurling of his life at the moment. He again is battle hardened because Chrissy and Neil had some battle in the Ulster final. And I can assure you, if you can get a score or two off Chrissy McKay, you're doing well. So yeah, look, Hugh Lawler's a fabulous fullback, and I would agree with you. He's arguably the top fullback in the country at the moment. But don't underestimate this kid McLaughlin. I'm telling you, he's the real deal. He may only be 17 years of age, but he can win his own dirty ball. He can score left or right. He's very, very cool and composed when he gets the ball in front of the goals and finishing 4 goals. His work rate is fabulous. And yeah, I think that's going to be the making or breaking of the game. I think the Neil McManus against Hugh Lawler, I think Mikey Butler will pick up Joseph McLaughlin. But what I would say to you, Shane, is if you look at the Leinster final, you may correct me if I'm wrong here, but the O'Loughlin Gaels fullback or half back line scored 7 points from play. Paddy Deegan hit 5. Their forward line hit 4 points from play, including 1 from a sub. I think O'Loughlin Gaels forwards could struggle against Cushendall's defence. Cushendall's defence are very, very good. You know, the 2 Burks in there, Paddy and Martin, who are very, very tough defenders. And I tell you, if you keep your eye off or take your eye off Paddy Burke, like Paddy Deegan does, he'll nick you a point or 2. Then you've got Owen Campbell, who plays at 6, but he's a very offensive 6, and again can clip points. And Scott Walsh is playing great hurling. He's back full fitness and playing great hurling. I think O'Loughlin Gaels forwards will struggle to get scores off this Cushendall defence. Now, again, you're saying Neil will have to have the game of games against Hugh Lawler. Well, you know, somebody like Owen Walls or Mark Bergen are going to have to, or Conor Neary are going to have the game of their lives to get a few scores off this Cushendall defence. And if they don't, where do the scores come from? Now, Cushendall will have to keep an eye on Paddy Deegan, because 5 points from play in a Leinster final is some clipping, I can tell you. But Paddy Burke scored 4 points from play in the Antrim final, so they've got defenders that can score as well. So I just think Cushendall have more scoring power than O'Loughlin Gaels, and therefore will narrowly win this game.
And like that's been probably the case for O'Loughlin's all year, that they had relatively low scoring games. They keep the opposition down. There's not too many goals. Do you see actually the venue, Navan, compared with like Croke Park, where O'Loughlin's played their Leinster final? Like, is that a bit of a game changer? Like for ye playing and, you know, in that Ulster final in Newry compared with Croke Park, it's just a totally different sort of game. It's almost a different sport that you're playing.
Yeah, but Navan's a big pitch, Shane, and it's also one of the best surfaces in Ireland. Tyrone played Meath there in the Christie Ring, and I know it's the summertime and it was a beautiful hot day, but you know, it's always been known as one of the best surfaces in the country, and that, I think, that lend to good fast hurling. The big pitch will lend to an open game. Newry was a tighter pitch, but Cushendall can operate whatever way you want. It's not Croke Park, agreed, and the surroundings are certainly not Croke Park. But don't forget, Cushendall beat Sarsfields in Navan in 2016 in the All-Ireland semi-final. You know, they'll have good memories from that there, and I just don't think it'll come to, whatever pitch it's on will not matter. This will be a game of it'll be a war, because the 2 defences are the strongest units of both teams, and it'll be what forward unit can get the most scores off the opposition. And I just think Cushendall have got, they didn't score any goals against us, but they do have goals in them, and if they get 1 or even 2 on Sunday, could make a big difference.
And like, I just want to ask you then about the likes of the McCambridges as well, and Ed McQuillan's performance, getting, I think it was 3 excellent points he got the last day out against G.
Yeah, Ed actually hit 4, got man
4.
of the match. Yeah, and I mean, he hadn't been playing for Cushendall, so it was a great choice from the Cushendall management. Listen, Ed McCambridge and Ronan McAteer. Ronan McAteer was very good against us as well. Them lads are, you know, will get scores. You know, they've got Sean McAfee to come in who can create and get scores as well. Cushendall have other players who might not hit the 5, 6, 7 points. They might not hit 2-1 like young McLaughlin might do, but they'll get 2 or 3 points and they'll keep the scoreboard ticking over. And I just think that overall Cushendall's forward line will have more scoring power than against the O'Loughlin defence than the O'Loughlin's will against Cushendall. But the one thing Cushendall need to do is they need to keep a tight eye on Paddy Deegan. You can't think, well, he's a defender, I'm going to run away and get away from him. You actually almost have to mark Paddy Deegan like you were marking a forward. You need to be touch tight on him. You need to be putting pressure on him as soon as he gets the ball, because if you give him 5, 6 meters of grass in front of him, he'll step into it and put it over the bar.
And is there somebody that you think would be the man to do that if it were to transpire that way, that O'Loughlin's fancied it? And then conversely, at the other end, do you think someone like Conor Heary might be like, anytime Owen Campbell thinks he's getting on the ball, I'm going to be stuck to him? Now, just picking maybe Conor Heary because he's, you know, forceful, athletic player.
Yeah, but it's so difficult when you've got a good number 6 like a Paddy Deegan or an Owen Campbell. It's so difficult to tie them down, because as a forward, your instinct is to be trying to find space. Your instinct is trying to get off the shoulder of someone to take a ball. Your instinct is try to get into a scoring position. It's not to track a man or to where's he at or to be thinking about him all the time. And whilst you might do that to the best of your ability, it's the moment you don't think about that these guys will get away from you. But you need someone who can track Owen Campbell. You need someone with the legs to be able to do that. And the same with Paddy Deegan. So I'm not sure who Cushendall can put on him. That'll be down to Brian Delargy. Brian's made a lot of good decisions this year. Taking Ed McQuillan in and playing him in the final against us was obviously a very good decision. He'll have something up his sleeve, no doubt. And as I say, that'll be interesting to see how them 2 number 6s pan out.
And when you see like in general, people are probably going to fancy O'Loughlin's here. Do you think that's partly down to the whole? Which look, it's a Kilkenny team up against an Antrim team. Obviously, they're going to be winning that. Like I'm just looking at the bookies here, and there's a 4-point handicap in favour of O'Loughlin's. They're 3-1 on.
No, that's what it is. It's the Kilkenny and Leinster champions playing the Antrim and Ulster champions. Now, don't get me wrong, O'Loughlin's, when you're the Kilkenny and Leinster champions, you're the real deal. They're a good team, a really good team. But I just think in the club scene that, sometimes the bookies and people in general look at it and go, well, look, it's Kilkenny against Antrim. There's only one winner there. But this is the club scene and it's different. And the club Ulster champions have always been able to have to match any of their opponents. We're not always winning, but if you look back at when Ballyhale played Slaugthneil in Uri, we weren't given a pup's chance that day because of who it was and who we were, and we put them to the pin of their collar. So I wouldn't look too much. Bookies odds is just people's opinions. This game will go to the wire, believe me, Shane. This will go right down to the last few minutes.
When you played Ballyhale that time up in Newry, would that be like the toughest day that you had had? It was 224 to 219 for a finish. That was in January 2020. Was that probably the most agonising one that you've had with Slaugthneil?
Yeah, I think so. If you can imagine, had Slaugthneil beat Ballyhale that day, just what that would have done for Ulster hurling, what it would have done for hurling in general. Wouldn't have done a lot for Ballyhale, I'm sure, but we would have went to the final that year, and I would have fancied us to win it. And when Brendan Rodgers, when he hit the ball into the roof of the net in the 2 minutes from the end of time to take us to within a point of Ballyhale, I was thinking, this is it. We've got the momentum here. We're going to win this. But then Colin Fennelly gets a goal at the very end, and a 5-point defeat. It was a bit sore on us. We had them right to the very end. So yeah, it was the one which you were very proud of. You came away because the display was so good. We had matched the best in the country, but ultimately you still were beat. You had lost, and it was a sore one to take. But Ballyhale were, you were looking at half a Kilkenny team out in front of you. They were a fabulous team, still are a fabulous team, but aging a wee bit now. But TJ that day was unerring from the frees. Colin Fennelly was unplayable. They're just a super team.
Okay, well, we'll start to get your comments in, folks out there, if you have any thoughts on this game. Maeve12 says, I'm a Galway man. Well, maybe it's not Maeve then, MEAB12. I'm a Galway man, not Thomas's, but the core of that team was there in 2013 when they went all the way. Can't see them going any further, and I'm surprised they won Galway this year. There's a fresh face, Michael Verney, if ever I've seen one.
Takes a couple of years off me.
It does, yeah. You need to get him back. How things? We were just talking about Cushendall against the O'Loughlin Gaels this weekend, and I suppose you've been plumbing for O'Loughlin's most of the time this year. Of course, he said, I don't know if you saw it, Mickey, but he was predicting them to win. Kilkenny got that right. Then he predicted them to win Leinster, but actually subsequently predicted them to lose every single game in the meantime. Still claims
he's a chameleon. He just changes his colours every 5 minutes,
I tell you what, that's a really interesting game from a Cushendall point of view. Obviously, scrape past Lockheed in the county final. Like, they were lucky to get the draw against Portaferry, and Mickey will probably say this, like, they delivered a fair performance in the Ulster final, and they look like a side that's getting better and better, if anything. Yeah, that's a tasty game, and O'Loughlin's would want to be really on guard there, because if they're in any way off, Cushendall will punish them, and they can punish them in a lot of places. Two intriguing games this weekend. That one in particular, expect that to be, that's a one-score game, I'd imagine, realistically.
Yeah, well, look, and Mickey, I suppose if you want to expand on it yourself, but like Mickey's thinking that there's more scoring power on the Cushendall side here, so he's edging towards them. Now, I would say I'm going towards O'Loughlin's because, like, you have 3 peak inter-county players in Butler, Lawler, and Deegan, and I just think that this game, like you said, Mickey, is going to be really, really tight. But when you have 3 top-end inter-county players like that, I just kind of think they might come up with a couple more moments. Maybe you want to expand on that, Mickey, but maybe Michael will let you in first.
Yeah, no, just I suppose the big one is, can Cushendall win if Neil McManus is tied down potentially by Hugh Lawler or something? You know what I mean? I think that's
Mickey challenged that already. Now Mickey challenged that already. To be fair.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the O'Loughlin's are very kind of deceiving. On paper, you're thinking, yeah, they don't have any standout forwards, but like everybody seems to chip in. 22 points in a 22 points in a Leinster final, 20 points in a Kilkenny final. It's not gonna be like 223 to 221 or anything like that. They won't concede that much. Like that 118 that they conceded was the biggest they'd conceded since the Bennett's Bridge game, which was 22 points, I think. But I think O'Loughlin's could just wrestle this away from them just about. And yeah, I think it's only a score game, but I think a couple of those big duels where there's marquee men going up against marquee men, I'd probably see O'Loughlin's having an advantage. I don't know if you talked about this already, Mickey, but who would you think Paddy Burke would be picking up? Because who he picks up and potentially negates is a big one. Like, I don't know. To me, Owen Campbell's not a marker. Would you send Paddy Burke out after Mark Bergen? And if he ties him down, is that a big job done, or what way would you look at that?
Well, I mean, I don't think Cushendall will take Owen Campbell out of 6. That's where he plays, and he plays it really, really well. He's very effective there. I think Cushendall will just line out with the team that they line out with. Paddy Burke will be at cornerback. Liam Gillen will be at fullback. Martin Burke will be in the other corner, and they'll pick up whoever comes to them. They don't tend to go out and pick up man marking jobs. They trust whoever is in that position to pick up whoever. And that's what they've done against us. So you may see Paddy Burke, if there is a change, you may see Paddy Burke coming out on the corner near possibly. That could happen because that will give Paddy a chance to attack. He's a very offensive defender. Scored 4 points from play in the Antrim final. He was tied down a bit more against us because he was marking Brendan Rodgers and was trying to keep the gate close defensively. But I just think Cushendall will pick up whoever comes their way and then take it from there. They trust their defence, and quite rightly so, because their defence are very, very strong.
Okay, we'll move on to St. Thomas's against Ballygunner. Michael, you're going for O'Loughlin Gaels, I presume.
O'Loughlin's, yeah.
Okay, so St. Thomas's against Ballygunner, and I suppose St. Thomas's last played on October the 29th when they won the county final against Turlough. That was 212 to 113. Davy Burke, who had done his cruciate earlier in the year, he came on late in that game. Do you reckon, Mickey, at this stage, if a guy has made his comeback, but at that stage, and maybe your experience of bringing players back from injuries and stuff like that, do you think a guy who's done his cruciate, he's back playing within 6 months, and that's got the guts of 6 weeks ago at this stage, do you think, you'd be thinking, let's try and start this guy?
Well, look, I mean, only they'll know that, Shane, because they'll see what's going on in training. They'll see how fit he is. They'll see how his knees holding up to the rigors of what will be quite intense training at this stage. And I would believe that if he's shown enough in training, that he'll be playing. He's a very, very important player to them. And what is there to lose? Why hold him back if he's fit and ready to go? Put him out. A bit like, I suppose, Kilkenny done a few years ago in the All-Ireland final. They put Henry Shefflin out, and it didn't work out for him. He had to come back off because the cruciate couldn't hold up to it. But I think if David Burke's fit and able and is training well, then he'll start the game. Because St. Thomas's will need, they will need their best 15 on the pitch to give themselves a chance against who I think everybody would agree is the best club team in the country at the moment, until proved otherwise. But it's very difficult to see past anything but a Ballygunner winning this game. But what I would say is that 2 years ago, St. Thomas's put in a gigantic performance against Ballyhale and Thurles in the All-Ireland semi-final, and it took a moment of magic by TJ from a free to get Ballyhale past them. If St Thomas's can come up with that type of performance, they give themselves a chance against Ballygunner. But anything less, and it's only going to be one way.
I'd be in the same corner as Mickey. Like David Burke's been sprung like with maybe 5-10 minutes to go in the last 2 games, when they're just looking for a little kick or a little bit of experience to bring him over the line. Like, to me, like if you're springing him with 20 minutes to go, you're probably going to be under pressure against Ballygunner. Do you know what I mean? He's going to be expected then maybe to turn a game. If he's fit and he's done the majority of the work the last, 6-7 weeks, I think you have to start him just for his nous and experience and positioning even more so. Do I think he'll go toe-to-toe midfield with Conor Sheehan or Paddy Levy? Probably not. I think they try and be a bit more cute. They don't generally play a sweeper or an extra defender, but he did start the All-Ireland semi-final centre-back last year, and his positioning could be crucial. Like, if Philip Matney's going to be free at the other end, chances are somebody's going to be free at the Thomas's end. So I don't think he'd be a bad player to play in that role where he's not necessarily picking up a player and he's just using his noggin a bit more than anything else.
Like last year, Mickey, Thomas's were stung by or Dunloy, I should say, in the All-Ireland semi-final. It was a brilliant performance. I was there. Keelan Malloy's goal was, it was just class. But that's a year on. That was a year after they had lost to Ballyhale in those dramatic circumstances. Shane Cooney was injured, didn't start that, didn't play at all that day against Ballyhale. The year after, in that painful loss to Dunloy, he only came on late on. Dara Burke only came on late on through injury as well. So I'm wondering, like, is this a team that is a little bit scorned from the last couple of years, and could they come out with a little bit of fire? And will that even be enough against the Ballygunner team? Because the way they play, I suppose, they move the ball around enough that even if you start furiously and you're chasing everywhere, they'll just wear you down after a few minutes, making you chase shadows.
Yeah, well, St Thomas's don't want to get into that game. They don't want to be playing the game that Ballygunner play, because if they do, there's only one winner. St Thomas's need to bring this into a close, a sort of close-bodied fight as such. They need to get a lot of rucks happening. They need to get a lot of 50-50 duels. They need it to be physical. If it's an open game, Ballygunner will run away with it. But if St Thomas's come up with the performance, and I'm repeating myself, but the performance they put in against Ballyhale 2 years ago was a performance of coming from the heart. I suppose everybody had them written off and thought, well, Ballyhale's going to win this. And it was just going to be Ballygunner and Ballyhale in the final. Everybody was looking forward to that. They had discounted Slaughtneil and they discounted St Thomas's. St Thomas's were stung a bit by that. They didn't like it. They're a proud team. They've won 6 Galways in a row now. That's some achievement, which shows the caliber of team. But they'll come out with loads of heart on Saturday night. It's under lights. If there happens to be a bit of rain, if the ground happens to soften up, it could suit them to get into a battle. They'll be ready for it. So I think that's what they need to do. I think there's one last big performance in them. They will be disappointed and hurt by losing the semi-final last year, albeit that they were beaten by a very, very good Dunloy team. So this could be their last hurrah. There's a few guys who are coming towards the end of their careers. This could be the last hurrah for them. And they've got the biggest battle of all ahead of them, because everybody expects Ballygunner to win this All-Ireland. But who knows? St Thomas could be the ones to upset it.
Just on Mickey's point there, Shane, like, the best performance they've delivered in the last decade was when they were hurting big time against Ballyhale. And that was kind of based from that no-show in the All-Ireland final against them a couple of years ago. They should really be hurting, and I know they are hurting from the Dunloy game last year, which they never really got going. Their depth of their squad was probably exposed the same day. Like, David Burke is back now. I think they have a full deck to choose from. I think they have more depth than they've had before. A couple of new faces in as well. I think there's an intriguing kind of question ahead of them, though. And I think what they do with Fintan Burke is going to be really interesting, because, like, he's a brilliant full-back and one of the best in the country. When he's marking that type of, 6'2", powerful, 14-stone kind of player, that real powerful forward. But he's not going to come up against one of them at the weekend. He's going to come up against, a fleet-footed Desi Hutchinson, or, likewise, Patrick Cushendall as well. So, like, does it suit Fintan Burke to be, like, exposed somewhat with 50 or 60 yards in front of him against a flyer? I'm not so sure. Then I'm thinking, are they going to maybe potentially utilise him in another in another area, let Keimani or David Sherry potentially pick up one of those two lads. I think that's going to be kind of a fascinating aspect to it as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this here. Maybe I should be throwing Davy Burke into the starting team, but just for this, I've thrown in the county final team just because we're unsure. Are there any matchups, Mickey, that you think are definitely going to happen in this game? Like, for example, Barry Coughlin, will he be on Aina Burke? Maybe, Ian Kenny on Ian Flannery, or Victor Manzo, Shane O'Sullivan on Dara Burke. Like, is there anything jumping out to you?
Nothing really, to be honest with you. I think Barry Coughlin will just play at full back, and whoever comes in there, again, they're a bit like Cushendall. They don't tend to set their team up to go and pick up particular players in the opposition. Ian Kenny will play at corner back, Barry Coughlin will play at full back, and whoever comes their way. But yeah, that could be an interesting one if Ian Burke's in a full forward on Barry Coughlin. There could be something in that there, and Barry Coughlin's a great full back, but there could be something in that for St Thomas's. There could be.
And like we've seen in the past, Michael Verney, that is. Actually, do you know what? We've another man jumping in here as well, David Connor of the Tuam Herald. David, great to have you on the show. And the first thing I wanted to ask you is David Burke going to start, do you reckon?
How are you lads? How things? I don't know. I would imagine so. I would say I'd say he will start. But that's only a guess. I actually don't know. I know they've played a couple of challenge games. They played one against Galway. They played one against Ballygunner, and from what I understand, he featured a fair bit in those two games. So look, I think they're up against such a challenge that I don't think they can risk starting without him. I think, just his experience from the off, and I suppose if you have to whip him a bit earlier, it's probably a bit easier than if you're trusting him into the game and it's already out of your grasp, which would be like a major issue. He can really probably influence it from the start. He can probably settle things down. His positioning would be good. And if it was me, yeah, I'd start him anyway. And I haven't heard of any negative effects surrounding the injury or anything like that. I believe he feels good. So why not? I'd say go for it, because given the challenge you're up against, you need absolutely everyone to see can you overcome it.
Yeah, is there optimism in Galway, David, that St Thomas's can do something here?
No, I wouldn't say it's up. No. Even the bookies odds will tell you, Shane, like it's what Ballygunner are 1-6. I don't think Thomas has ever been 9-2 for a game, as far as I know. Even when they were coming up against Ballyhale those times, I don't think they were ever quite this big. I suppose it's just the nature of the challenge, and I suppose why they're so, priced as well. I suppose priced so bigly is probably down to the fact of their performances over the last few years in the All-Ireland series. I suppose the Ballyhale semi-final aside, I suppose the feeling is out there that they probably haven't done themselves justice, and I suppose that probably justifies the price of the price at the end of the day. And I think even chatting to people locally, I suppose they're like haven't seen this team win so much. I suppose the belief will be there, but I suppose Ballygunner are just like an unbelievable challenge, and I'd argue probably that this Ballygunner team is probably a bigger challenge than Ballyhale in a lot of ways, because like Ballyhale, as good as they are, they'll probably go out and hurl you, traditionally in a lot of ways, and it'll be 15-on-15, and there won't be as much systems play. It'll be probably you kind of win your own ball against Ballyhale. You can beat them at the fundamentals. You'll probably defeat them. Whereas structurally, systems-wise, I suppose you have to get a lot more on the money against Ballygunner, given the quality of ball they give into their attack, given their defensive system, giving up Free and Philip Mahoney. Like, you've just so many headaches, and never mind the individuals they have in their ranks as well. It's probably their biggest challenge to, given their age profile, they're probably a bit older now than they were even when a few years ago against Ballyhale. It's probably an even bigger challenge in that sense, but I suppose with that comes experience as well.
Yeah, and Mickey, you've been brilliant with your time. I might ask you your thoughts on who's going to win this game just before we let you go.
Look, I don't think we can look past Ballygunner winning this game. I wouldn't necessarily think it'll be the difference will be what the bookies have it as. I think O'Loughlin Gaels have got a good bit of fight in them, but Ballygunner are an exceptional club team, one of the best I've ever seen. So I would say Ballygunner to win this game by maybe 4 or 5 points.
Yeah, and just a comment for you here, Michael, before you go as well. Michael, we need you back in Ballycastle. That's for Cú Cullen's blood hurler. So you're in demand anyway. We'll put it that way.
Well, thanks very much.
Okay, well, look, Michael, hopefully we'll chat to you again soon, and thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Shane.
Oh, sorry, I just cut him up at the wrong time. Happy Christmas to you too, Mickey. And like, just in terms of the team that St. Thomas's put out last year that lost that time to Dunloy, they were missing lads that day. Shane Cooney only came on, which we brought up earlier. Dara Burke wasn't able to start. Like, that probably wasn't the best hand that St. Thomas's could put out, and they got duly punished.
Absolutely, yeah. They were missing him. They're missing a lot. I think that David Cherry was injured as well. He's been very consistent defender for them. James Regan was absent as well. Like, you know, I mean, you're talking a player who's hurled for Galway in an All-Ireland final at the same time, and you know, he is one of the most important players in that Thomas's team. Kind of runs the show from midfield, and if he was alongside, say, a David Burke, you know, you wouldn't have too much worries in that sector of the field. So yeah, like, I suppose, like, it was a bit of a disaster really for them last year. Like, even like they were already down a few, and then Dara Burke pulls up in the warm up, and I think he came on with a few minutes to go, but it was a real last throw of the dice stuff. Like, he clearly wasn't moving correctly, and I suppose it just shows that probably Thomas's probably don't have the strength and depth, or maybe then they didn't have the strength and depth. You know, that maybe some of the other top club teams have. So I suppose this year it's unusual because normally they're carrying a serious injury. Like, David Burke's fitness concerns, or, you know, match sharpness aside, I think they have absolutely everyone. There are probably a few more players that have a bit more experience in them as well, the likes of Victor Manso, and, you know, John Head would be another one who would have gained a lot of experience since then. I suppose it probably wasn't suited either Dunloy, or like, they very much like to run at them, and I suppose Ballyhale probably would as well with their pace. Like, and I think I found it was Thomas's, they didn't really have the answers to the pace of Dunloy, and that probably caught them in the end. On top of all the injuries and, you know, various other factors that caught them on the day. Like,
do you think Stephen O'Keefe isn't yet another big factor here? His quick puck outs, his just vision and composure as well. Like, isn't it just a huge advantage? Like, there's probably very few club teams or county teams that do it, you know, at the highest level, unless they've got an unbelievable keeper.
Yeah, it's unreal what he can do, and it just, I'd love to see the statistics behind the amount of scores that come from his puck outs, and, you know, we're relying on, like, 99% of the time it's going to be landing on the money, and it's going to end up in a Ballygunner possession, which there's not many goalkeepers out there, you know, in club level in particular, that you can say that. Yeah, it's huge. Like, trying to shut it down, but, like, do you press up and let him go along? Like, is he just as adept at going long? Like, or do you stand off and let them play it out from the back and do it? Like, there's so many headaches in that regard in trying to stop them. And, like, I really don't envy the Thomas's management trying to come up with a game plan, and, you know, when to press, when to not, when to sit back, because, like, they can punish you in so many ways, and the movement of their forwards as well. And I think, you know, they're just equally adept at just going long, like, you know, the agricultural ball straight into the square if needs be as well. You know, they can win it all ways really. So it's, you know, I don't really know what you do, like, Shane. Like, it's like, you know, obviously O'Keefe is huge. Like, it's trying to curb his influence, but, like, how do you really curb a keeper's influence at the end of the day?
Yeah, and Adrian McGrath says the only theory to beat Ballygunner I can think of is 2 fullbacks either side of the field with a man marker on Desi, sit 6 on the D, then 2 wing backs, 4 across midfield, then 2 and 2. I just got a little bit confused there towards the end, Adrian, but it really does seem like there's an element of being somewhat zonal as well as man marking. Like, do you sort of pick and choose? Here's the lad we'll go a little bit loose on so that I can keep an eye on Desi or whatever. But, like, there's just too many forward options there that can punish you, Dave.
Oh, absolutely. Like, all week trying to think of, you know, matchups if it was me in that situation, like how you deal with it. There's just so many. I suppose I'm just looking back at. I joined late, obviously, so just looking here. Yeah, that's pretty much along the lines of what we'd be expecting. There was maybe John Head potentially for Desi as well, because John Head has in the past he's taken Jamie Ryan in club action against Loughrea. You know, now I would probably imagine it'll probably go with Keane Mahoney, but John Head is an option there. I think pretty much all the rest of them seem on the money. There's the question there whether, like, if David Burke comes in, like where, like, is it probably someone like a Damien Finnerty or an Evan Duggan that drops out? And like, it kind of leaves you who was the other forward that's going to step in? Because truth be told, like Evan Duggan, and I'm sure he probably admitted himself, he's not an out and out forward. He's a defender, probably a midfielder by nature. So maybe if you had David maybe at wing forward, maybe dropping back as a third midfielder with one of the inside line coming out as well, perhaps that might work with you. But yeah, you look, I think the matchups there from a Thomas's perspective, I think that's probably the way you'll see them, and I think you're pretty much on the money. I'd say Fenton will probably have his hands full with Kevin Mahoney as well. Like, I don't know if Fenton is the correct man for Desi in that sense. Like, you'd probably prefer Fenton minding the house as a last, you know what I mean? Any of the boys that come in, and he's probably bury a few, and he can deal with the high ball dropping as well at the same time. So yeah, that'd probably be the only one, whether it would be John Head or Keane Mahoney for Desi. I think pretty much I'd expect David Cherry to go on Fitzgerald, and probably the remainder of the other two then between Head and Mahoney for between Hogan and Hutchison.
Yeah, and Michael, do you think there's any chance that, like, we're talking there about David Burke and where he might come in? So one suggestion, maybe he come in as a deep lying wing forward who comes back and works the middle. But like the best performance that we've seen Thomas has had in the last few years, because Shane Cooney wasn't fit, he started as the number 6 against Ballyhale, and he was unbelievable, and he was working the ball out lovely from the back. And I just wonder, could you maybe put him in the half back line along with maybe shunt Shane Cooney out to the wing? I mean, obviously, there'll be a fair amount of rejigging required. It's just that they performed so well that time. I'm just wondering, do they put him in there where he can sort of orchestrate things?
Yeah, difficult one. You know yourself, when you're, like, as much as he has done, he's not fully fit. Like, he's not fully tuned. If you're fully tuned physically and ready to go, maybe I'd be kind of maybe looking more where can they get, I know it sounds a bit mad, but where can they get away with him playing, if you get me? Because you're coming up against like the cream of the crop here. You're not going to, if you're only like 85% fit, you're not going to dictate a game or have a massive play in the game. So I think they need to be really smart, but I'm sure that's a conversation he had with his brother Kenneth probably a day or two after the county final in some snug somewhere, where they said, this is the role I'd love to, have for you, because we're probably going to be playing Ballygunner. So I'm sure they've thought about it a long way out, and they're going to be smart about where they're playing. But like, I don't see him going toe-to-toe with the lads midfield, because them two boys are energizer bunnies, and you'd really want to be at the full of your health to be going tracking them. Like, just age profile wise, maybe he'd go on Shane O'Sullivan's side if he was playing half forward, maybe, because it's someone who's not going to punish him as much physically. But these are all the kind of the fascinating jewels. But the one thing, and David kind of mentioned it there, the word he mentioned was headaches. And like, Thomases have all the headaches. Ballygunner will play, as Mickey said, they will play exactly as they've always played. Same as Limerick, same as the great Kilkenny team back in the day. You know where everybody's going to play. All the questions, all the headaches are on the other side. You're kind of thinking, how can we negate Paddy Levy? How can we negate Pádraig Mahoney's role? How can we keep Desi quiet? How can we cut out space going inside? Really, all the questions are on the Thomas's side.
James OS says Verney has us all thinking of sipping pints in a snug of a Thursday afternoon now. And David, I'm going to just say that Ballygunner, in their past 3 games against the champions of Cork, Limerick and Clare, they've kept them to under 13 points a game on average. Where do Thomases have scorers? Do they have enough scorers there? I mean, like, give us the best case scenario.
Best case scenario is probably 215. I would say, like, especially in these conditions in Portlaoise, like, you're going to need goals. Like, the dream scenario is like 5-10 or something like that. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to score that. You're not going to score 5 goals as Stephen O'Keefe. Like, so it's probably 2. You get 2 chances, you take them. Like even against Ballyhale that year, like Éanna Burke had. In that semi-final, he had, like, I think he was about, was he 10 yards out, and he hit it straight at the keeper. Like, and, it just goes to show the small margins. Like, if that chance presents itself again, like, he takes that, he takes that 99 times out of 100. But those are the opportunities you're probably going to get. Like, you're probably going to get 2 most, aren't you, really? Like, maybe 3, maybe like a third of a half goal chance. And I suppose you probably have to take it. And I suppose, like, you're going to need Conor Cooney to nail absolutely everything on freeze. You're probably going to have to win a few questionable frees as well at the same time. You're probably going to hope that the ref is, a sympathetic ear towards the underdog as well at the same time. And Ian Burke is probably going to have to come up with it. Victor Manso is you're probably going to need a bit more from Dara Burke than you have got over the last all throughout this year. I know he got 2 points in the county final, but like his scoring rate has probably tallied off a small bit over the last year or two. If you do have Evan Duggan wing forward, he's never going to score you more than a point or two a game. So that would be a situation there where you're not going to get the adequate scores out of him. So it's very difficult. Like it is going to come down to goals, and I suppose it would be like this time of year in Portlaoise. It probably does suit Thomas's the actual venue. You'd hope the ground is a bit heavy, and you'd hope it's a bit of a war more than rather than letting Ballygunner get into the free flowing style. 2 goal chances, take them. Please God, you can clear 15 points. Even if 12 of them are from frees, you'll take it at this point. And please God, you can just kind of shut them down at the other end.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, Michael.
Yes, go on. I'm just going to say on David's point there, they're going to have to bring the blood and thunder like Na Piarsaigh did, but they're going to have to execute unlike Na Piarsaigh did. Like Na Piarsaigh got so many things right in that game, but just there was like the last pass. How many times did you see it against Ballygunner that the last pass just doesn't go to hand? Like if 2 chances arise on Saturday night, like as David said, they're going to have to take them. They're going to have to be clinical because, like as we saw with John Conlon's shot the last day, that drops short or the ball is saved, and 15 seconds later, it's up in the net, the far end. And that's the blink of an eye stuff with Ballygunner. Remember the same at Mount Sion, was in the county final maybe the year before last. A penalty saved, and all of a sudden, a minute later, the ball is up. Like, they will crucify you in that instance. If you don't go for the throw, like, they literally need to walk the ball into the net if they have to. Like, walk the ball. Like, it has to be nearly 8 yards or closer to beat Stephen O'Keefe. And if that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. If they're hauled down and get a penalty, they get a penalty and they try and convert that. But they're going to have to be so clinical in every chance they get. And as Dave says there, they're going to have to be cute and they're going to have to buy a few bits and pieces here and there. Like Ballygunner do plenty of it. They pull the wool over the referee's eyes plenty all over the pitch at different times. And Thomas is going to have to be very cute, particularly if they get any sort of a run on him. They're going to have to make hay. And I'm talking about getting a run on, that could be 5 minutes. You might get a run for 5 minutes, and within that 5 minutes, you have to make hay because they're the best club team I've seen in a long time to react to what you're doing and what's working for you. All of a sudden, 2 minutes later, that's no longer working because Philip Matney's now parked back and Paddy Levy's back, and the whole thing is shored up. So when the chances arise, they're going to have to take them and go for the throat.
And Michael, isn't it funny? Like a few years ago, Ballygunner were the team that you couldn't fully trust all the time. Whereas now you do trust that a big performance is going to come. On the other side, St. Thomas's, who won their All-Ireland 10 plus years ago, they've had big All-Ireland semi-finals. They've had big matches like the Ballyea one, the one against Borrisoleigh, the one against Dunloy last year. Now, they've had their big moments too outside of the All-Ireland, winning All-Ireland semi-finals and so on. But they just don't give you enough to kind of trust that they can regularly get up to the level of Ballyhale or Ballygunner.
No, probably not. No, it's been kind of isolated kind of incidents. Like we look back at, like I'd say that Ballyhale performance 2 years ago was the best they have been. Have we seen the colour of that since? No, we haven't. We haven't seen the colour of it since. So you're like, as a neutral, it's more in hope that you might see something like that at the weekend. Whereas with Ballygunner, very like Limerick, you probably know exactly what you're going to get. And systematically, you know exactly what you're going to get. No matter what, the Thomas is going to have to throw 5 or 6 different plans at them here, because you know what Ballygunner are going to do, and they're going to suss whatever Thomases are doing out. Maybe after 10 minutes, they're going to have to go maybe operate with something different, maybe go with a big man at the edge of the square. Then at different stages, they're going to have to try and hurt them from out the pitch. And then at different stages, they're going to try and create space and maybe open up for a ball inside to Éanna Burke. But there's going to be, they're going to have to have a lot of strings to their bow to take down what could be, in the next 12 to 18 months, like go down as one of the best club teams of all time. But at the minute, Thomas's and Ballygunner had the exact same amount of All-Ireland titles. So, it's gas. They both only have one at the minute. And as good as Ballygunner are, and we thought they were going to take over the club game, they were beaten in the semi-final last year. I'd say that will have them fairly forewarned as well with what's coming on Saturday night.
David, outside of the senior in the All-Ireland Intermediate, and I'm not expecting you to know the ins and outs of these teams because they're not in your remit in Galway there, but you've got a team from Mayo who won the Connacht Intermediate. They're up against Castle Lions of Cork. And in the junior, then you've got Easky of Sligo who beat Ballinasloe. I think it was Ballindereen. Sorry, I'm mixing them up. It was Ballinasloe.
Yeah.
They're against St. Catherine's of Cork. So kind of interesting that there isn't Galway teams at this stage of competition, or do you just think it's, you're up against a team that's from the top level in Sligo and from the top level in Mayo, so they probably should be winning intermediate and junior?
Yeah, this has been a bit of a debate in Galway over the last year or two, particularly when with Turin's kind of taken over the Connacht Intermediate Championship. I suppose the situation is in Galway, there was obviously a restructure last year, so with 16, we always had 24 senior teams. So the team coming out of Galway at the intermediate would be the 25th best team in Galway, whereas then, it's obviously Turin are a special team in Mayo at the minute. They're really good. They'd probably be senior A in Galway there or thereabouts if they were to play their trade there. I suppose it's probably a competition structure type of thing. We have a standalone senior B where it just kind of finishes at the senior B stage, and the sole prize at the minute is just promotion to senior A. So if right by right that would be renamed intermediate, but I'm sure I'll piss off a few of the clubs now by saying that, but that's what it is. It's an intermediate championship. It's the second tier. We've a big issue in Galway where we're very precious about our being called senior and retaining the senior status and all this, but at the end of the day, you're if you can't win the top tier competition, you're not really a senior team, and you can dress it up any way you want, but you're not. And so it would be now. In fairness, Ballindereen wouldn't be a million miles off the team that won probably senior B this year in Mulla. So there wouldn't be a whole pile between them if they were to get their houses in order. So I wouldn't exactly put it down to purely because that. I think from that point of view, it's Turin are excellent. They're probably a top half senior A team in Galway. They're missing a few this year. I think is it Cathal Freeman that's missing for them. So yeah, even at that, they still had more than enough for Ballindereen. Ballindereen were forewarned this year as well, because they played them a few years back when they won the intermediate and they were beaten from then as well. Turin are a very good team. They made the All-Ireland final last year. They were actually quite unlucky, I thought, in the game. I suppose, they probably would have driven them on a good bit this year as well. From the other one then, in terms of East, I wouldn't have seen much of them, but I know there's a fella from Galway over them called Brian Healy. He's from Ballygunner. But yeah, they played, it's strange in Galway. So there's a junior A championship, but who won that was Scahan, Montbellion, Mylaw, but they are an amalgamation. Clubs now, they're operating together. They got promoted intermediate next year, but as a giant entity, they weren't allowed to compete in this Junior 1 competition, which is for clubs' first teams only. So Ballinasloe, who actually won the Junior B this year, they were playing in this competition as well. So they were the Junior B champions in Galway. They actually ended up beating Slaugthneil Tyrone in a Junior 1 final. Now, sorry, this might seem very convoluted and complicated, but they bet Slaughtneil Tyrone, who would obviously have Donald O'Shea involved with them as well at the same time. So there was a bit of a resurgence in Galway this year in Ballinasloe, which was great to see, because for too long, I suppose they've probably been offering Michael will probably be more familiar with the size of Ballinasloe. It's a fairly big town, but to say that their top hurling team is Junior B, and I know they have a junior football team as well, but it's probably GA has probably slacked off a small bit, but they kind of got their house in order this year. They won the Junior B, they won the Junior 1, which was a huge deal. It was on the same day as the Galway final, and there was massive celebrations in there. There was nearly bigger celebrations than the senior final for Thomas's afterwards, even though the 6 in a row. It was actually incredible. So I can't say I know much about Easky, but I do know, I suppose Ballinasloe would be down a good few rings in Galway. They'd be so there's senior B, intermediate, Junior A, and Junior B. So it's the 6th tier really. So you probably couldn't take a whole pile from that, despite Ballinasloe improving quite a lot. So they probably have the experience of the year before as well. So maybe that might send them. But I'll be honest with you, Shane, I'm not overly familiar with Easky.
Yeah, and just before I let you go, Galway for Liam McCarthy next year, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Jesus, we're still getting over that second half against Limerick last year. So, if you were to go on the evidence of that, you would say, "Jesus, we'd be lucky to get back to that stage again." But I don't think so. I think it's somewhere down the middle. I suppose there was a bit of a collapse in the second half, but there's probably, there was a lot of elements in the first half that you would have been delighted with. I suppose Like I'll be honest. I thought Shefflin was going to go after the game last year. I just wasn't sure if maybe he thought he'd reached he thought he'd probably reached the end, given like the collapse in the Leinster final. Well, not the collapse, but I suppose it was a collapse in a way. The finish of the Leinster final was just very unlike anything he would have ever been involved in, and then to be beaten so comprehensively by Limerick in the semi-final. I know I interviewed Evan Island there before a couple of weeks back, and he was telling me, they were delighted to have him back, and like they really are, more than anything else this year, that they're driving forward for him, given the effort himself and Richie O'Neill are putting in, driving down for Kilkenny twice a week, maybe 3 times a week at times, maybe staying over away from their families and things like that. That's driving them on quite a lot. So Liam McCarthy with Limerick, probably not, but sure, will be more than enough to beat Tip anyway. So if they get out of Munster.
I was waiting for that, David. Look, brilliant to have you on the show, David, and hopefully we'll get you on again soon.
Down, take it easy. Good luck.
Sure, Dave.
Okay, so great to have him on. Come here, what do you make of the news that JP McManus is basically giving out £1 million to each county board to, I suppose, disseminate to the ladies' side and the men's side of the game? It's quite a story. I think it was in extra.ie this morning.
Yeah, I think Philip Lanigan had it this morning. Yeah. Like I know from being involved with my own club, like we'd absolutely take our hand off for what's coming. Like it's so hard to raise money when you're involved in a club. So like, it's a massive boost to, just thinking from my own club's point of view, it's a massive boost to our club. Listen, people will have different opinions on JP McManus and where he does or doesn't pay his tax, but you can't argue much with, like, he controls how he gives out his money, shall we say. If you look at all the scholarships down in UL and otherwise, and obviously the money that he gives towards Limerick GA, he made a similar kind of donation a couple of years ago to all the county boards and all the clubs, and this again, like, so I suppose there are some people, some very wealthy people, Irish people, living elsewhere and not giving anything back. So at least he's giving something back to grassroots all around the country. Yeah,
and a couple of people driving boots into me here. Colm Blindspot says, any sugar baby quips to be made, Shane, now tip or line in their pockets with JP's generosity, or you'll be crying to the county board to give the money back. No, I mean, I want to be that sugar. If I could be one of JP's sugar babies, I'd be happy enough. Crack of the Ash says, Limerick sugar daddy JP McManus brimming with pride as he lifts the All-Ireland title now with John Kiley. The sugar babies look on with delight. So that I think he's basically, that's verbatim, isn't it?
That is your tweet today, the All-Ireland final, verbatim, yes.
Like, do people think that I'm somehow going to be bothered by that? I think what he did is brilliant, and what he's helped do in Limerick is, like, I mean, it's ridiculous what they've done. Really and truly, isn't it ridiculous what they've done?
It's unbelievable, really, yeah. And as I said to you, he controls what he does with his money, and he doesn't hold on to it all. Whereas maybe you would talk about other wealthy Irish millionaires, potentially billionaires that live elsewhere, that basically do not give anything back to the Irish, anything to do with Ireland, basically. So. Listen, clubs the length and breadth of the country will be like, I'm in a WhatsApp group with my own club, and there's word filtering around, and people are absolutely over the moon. Like, if you look at, everyone has bills to pay, running costs, day-to-day running costs with a club. Like, this is a massive help. I'd say most clubs have it spent already, like, because there's always something to spend it on.
Yeah, there is for sure. Paul Raymond says, top man, the government will only waste the tax revenue anyway. I mean, there's food for thought.
Well, listen, Shane, let's not me and you get into the debate. I have no interest in talking to you about. I have no interest in talking to you about what the government does or does not do, because I have a fair idea what side of the fence you're on. But listen. As I said, the thing with JP is he controls where his money is going. It's going where he wants it to go, and you have to say it's been seen to great effect. Like, I know every year there's, God only knows how many scholarships handed out in UL through that JP McManus program, the Limerick Hurling Academy, Limerick GA in general, and now every club around the country across all 4 codes is benefiting.
Yeah, PWell74 says, wealthy people in every county, lads, but JP always put his hand in his pocket for his own pastimes and his own locality. So best of luck to everyone who kind of benefits from a benefactor. So fair play to him. I think it's brilliant. Obviously, there's like you said, people can complain about, paying tax in Ireland and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, that is a serious contribution of £1 million going to every single county board to be disseminated out to the different codes, male and female. I mean, what a gesture that is. He did 100,000 per county board after the 2018 All-Ireland he decided to do.
Yeah, it probably didn't hit me. Like, he's multiplied his donation by 10. Like, it's outrageous, really.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, look, we didn't go through them really, so we'll just talk a little bit more about the All-Ireland Intermediate semi-finals this weekend. So Turin of Mayo up against Castlelyons. And I was looking into Castlelyons a little bit. I was reading a piece there that Owen Cormacan had, and he was interviewing Anthony Spillane, who's been flying over and back from Dubai for games. Now, he scored a hat-trick against Corofin of Clare. Couldn't get back for the Crotta win because I don't think he would have got back in time for work. But he was saying to be in an All-Ireland semi-final is unbelievable. It'll be tough, but it's unbelievable to be there. Noel Furlong, who's their coach, said that the county is for the players because we had been waiting so long, whereas Munster and All-Ireland, they're for the community. I think we're getting better and better. Roll on 2 weeks' time. So, but like Turin, having been here before, in some ways that should give them a bit of an edge.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. And as David said there, like Turin put up a fair showing in the All-Ireland final last year against, a very, very strong Monaleen side. Turin waltzed through Mayo, got through Connacht fairly well, apart from a tough game in the final against Ballygunner. Mayo's an interesting one, Shano, as well. I think Colin Keys is doing a piece for us in the paper on Saturday. Mayo's clubs, hurling clubs, has multiplied, like doubled, and maybe even, I think it's gone from 4 to 10 senior clubs, or clubs that are actively promoting hurling, which is like a total outlier when you look at all the other counties, less privileged or weaker hurling counties. So it's phenomenal. They're really the ones that are driving it forward. Like, but at the end of the day, nothing, only an All-Ireland final win will suffice for Turin at this stage. And they've kind of, Cathal Freeman's not involved this year, but they've integrated a fair bit of youth and they've a fair bit of flair from the bits I've seen of them. And I'd probably be fancying Turin to come through here just about. And they kind of need to get that probably All-Ireland monkey off their back at this stage. But then, like, you look at the other semi-final and they're thinking the likely winners of that are going to make it very, very difficult to get that elusive All-Ireland.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking again that back to what David was saying about the Galway teams, could they not just call it Premier Intermediate? You know, the way the likes of Tipperary were having the team and the third team going into Munster Intermediate. Just call it Premier Intermediate and get over yourselves.
Yeah, there seems to be, I don't know, is there a pride or there's notions or whatever? I don't know what it is, but
I think it's notions. It has to be notions more than pride because it just doesn't make sense.
Call it what it is. Do you know what I mean? Call it what it is.
Yeah, Richard Hogan says an All-Ireland is beyond Turin this year. I suppose, is that down to the likes of Cathal Freeman not being there?
I'd say it's because of Thomastown, to be honest with you. Realistically.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's call a spade a spade. Setanta are 16-1 for a good reason here. Thomases are just so stacked with quality players. And like, just a bit more about Setanta, so it was their first ever provincial title at intermediate grade. Last year, they got to the last 8, I think, of the All-Ireland Junior, and they were ahead against Kilburn, 17 points to 111 late on, and they conceded 2 late goals, which would have been a very, very bitter pill to swallow. There's just no real way to make a case for Thomastown not winning this.
No.
Even if they don't perform.
Yeah, no, it's impossible. I think they have a decent cohort called into the Kilkenny panel for next year as well. They have aces all over the pitch. They're red hot, overwhelming favourites for a reason. They've beaten everybody nearly by double digits at this stage, and like, without disrespecting Setanta, if they're able to keep it below double digits, that would be quite something realistically at this stage.
Yeah, and look, we'd love it was a tight game. It's just very hard to suggest otherwise. So the junior semi-finals then, Eastgate of Sligo, as we've mentioned already, they beat Ballinasloe 118-212. Andy Kilcullen hit 111 that day. Finian Cawley, he had a huge performance. They're against St. Catherine's of Cork. Sean O'Donoghue scored 9 points for them against Fianna Kilnameedy in the Munster final. Owen Condon scored a couple of goals there. And then the other semi-final is Castleblaney of Monaghan against Tuller Ross Birkin. Do you know what? I was looking into it a little bit more. I probably could have looked into it earlier in the season. But Castleblaney they actually lost the senior final in Monaghan to Inniskeen Grattans. But then they go into the junior championship in Ulster, which is quite interesting the way it works out.
Same in Donegal,
Yeah.
because of the lack of clubs. St. Eunan's Letterkenny were beaten in the county final by Setanta, and it's a good idea within counties where they're getting less exposure to good games. So Eunan's would have got another, definitely 2, maybe 3 games in the junior, beaten in the junior final. It's a great way to get more exposure. So it's kind of gas how it's worked out with Castleblaney, yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this story? Tuller Ross Birkin, though. I mean, Wally Walsh, Pat Hartley, Marty Murphy, the way they've been flying. Keane O'Donoghue scored heavily the last day, and Marty Murphy 1-3. So just very, very difficult to go against Tuller Ross Birkin there. But one of the other stories that we've seen, Rory Beggan, Mark Jackson of Wicklow, and Charlie Smith of Down, hoping to make it in American football. I mean, they've already been involved in sort of combines and trialing already. Imagine if they actually made it, or one of them made it. Imagine Rory Beggan lining up, taking on like a 60-yard field goal attempt for Indianapolis Colts to beat Chicago Bears or something like that out in Soldier Field. Wouldn't that just be astonishing?
Yeah, it'd be phenomenal. And you obviously follow it a hell of a lot more than I do, but the NFL has a massive reach in Ireland now. But I'd be getting up first thing on the Monday morning to see how Rory Beggan has done in X or Y game, because I would have that much interest in it, or Mark Jackson or whoever. It's a phenomenal story, and this isn't a tentative link either. They have jumped a fair few hurdles to get to this stage now. And it looks like Mark Jackson's not going to be involved with Wicklow in 2024. Probably looks like Rory Beggan isn't going to be as well. This isn't like a couple of days trial or something like that, or going over for a good time or something. This is looking like that, they're close to giving it a real go. It's totally left field. It was a kind of a mad story. And I know there were a few kind of WhatsApps flying around, Rory Beggan going to the NFL with a little American football emoji, and said his goodbyes to the Scotstown players after the game the last day. And, how many messages have you got like that through WhatsApp where you're just thinking this is absolute rubbish? Not like it sounds so unbelievable that it couldn't be true. But then you kind of think about, is it Tig Leader that is kind of the Irish liaison, I think, and he's obviously worked on their kicking. And the big thing about it, we all know Beggan, Jackson, etc., have phenomenal kicks. I suppose it's the speed with which they have to be able to do it now.
Yeah.
There's no long 20-30 second
it's
run in.
that.
And that's, they've obviously, whatever about being able to do it with a 30-second run in, they've obviously shown that they're able to thrive doing it on this 2-second run in, because that's what they have to be able to do. It's funny, remember we talked about in the show before about Ron O'Gara kind of basically working more money for himself out of a contract, and that story was unbelievable at that time. This is unbelievable, but yet it's obviously happening.
And I remember seeing an interview with Harry Kane in the past year or so, maybe even after he went to Bayern Munich, but he was talking about his massive interest in NFL and how he'd like to be considered as a kicker or try it out or something at some stage. Now, whatever about, Rory Beggan, who's used to driving the ball 90 yards or 70 yards or whatever, I'm not sure how often Harry Kane has to kick the ball 70 yards in soccer. Probably never, ever, because he's just blasting the ball at a goal that's generally 20 yards away from him. It's just a completely different discipline. If that ball traveled another 50 yards, where's it skewing off to? It's just completely different. But what I'd also say about Beggan is he's been playing Gaelic football for Monaghan since 2011. So it's not like you're getting a player who's 19 or 20, 21, someone who's in college and, they're going over there on a scholarship or something. This is a guy who's unbelievably experienced at this stage. He's probably in his early 30s. I couldn't find his exact age there when I went looking it up. What a change so late in your career. Now, fair enough, he could stay going for another 5-10 years in NFL if he turns out to be a success. But it's just such an odd thing in your 30s, all of a sudden, I'm going to play NFL.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I wonder, do they follow it quite closely? If they do, imagine the buzz they're getting off it. Whatever about, if you're let's just say I was asked to go over and do that, I think it was cool, but I wouldn't have a link with any team or support. Do you know what I mean? I presume they're kind of supporters of it or follow it fairly closely. It's a mad kind of, it's that mad that it would never have been a dream, because it just seems so impossible. So it's fair play to them, and I hope it works out for at least one of them. Hopefully all three. But hopefully it works out for at least one of them, because I know I'd be following them very, very closely. And funny, I never really got into the AFL with Irish guys going over for whatever reason. But this is definitely something I'd be buying into if one of them does make their mark eventually.
There's a place kicker for the New York Giants. His name is Randy Bullock.
Brother of Sandra.
But that is some name, isn't it? But like, then you think, like, he's a huge man, Rory Beggan. Could be a case that, like, I think there can be situations where you go for a punt, hits the post, and maybe it stays in play, and he might end up having to tackle someone then. Those poor NFL players, if he gets his hands on them. To be fair, though, like, you are up against absolute animals. If one of those guys come charging you down, geez, you might not survive it.
No, definitely not. It's funny with Beggan as well. Like, the goalkeeper's kicking style has changed. If you look at, like, Cluxton always curls the ball. Am I right in saying? I'm fairly sure he does for his frees.
For his frees, yeah.
Whereas Beggan has changed it. He might have curled at the start, but a lot of them, Jackson included, like, they're arrowing the ball now. Exactly as you would like to be kicking a rugby ball or an American football. So the advances that have happened in Gaelic football over the last probably 5 years in particular have probably allowed this type of scenario to happen, where lads are kind of taking the wind out of it, taking any degree of doubt out of it, or ball curling in or whatever. It's just straight and true, and obviously that's exactly how he'd kick the oval ball as well.
Mickey Hart says he's not bothered by the noise around his move to Derry. So he was at the launch of the McKenna Cup, and he said, people need to realise it doesn't bother me. I don't hear it, I don't see it, I don't read it. I met loads of people, and not one of them said a crossword to me in Tyrone, and indeed in Derry either. And he was also saying, I'm on record many times saying that I enjoyed my work with Tyrone over so many years. And as I said many times, that if it came to a stage where Tyrone felt they didn't want me and I still had an interest in managing at this level, then I'd be prepared to do that. And that's exactly what I'm doing. But is he bothered? I mean, there's no way he hasn't heard it or seen something. Of course he has. Like, we had Carl Cavan on here a few weeks ago, and he was like, this is mad.
Yeah, well, like, Mickey Hart and Brian Cody are cut from the same cloth anyway. He's basically he's done his best to nip it in the bud. You can't really ask him again now. Do you know what I mean? He's shown no emotion whatsoever. He hasn't shown that it's bothered him whatsoever. He's just been like, I don't know what the big deal is all about. So maybe someone will ask him the next time after a game, and then that'll be that done. And he's just kind of moved on. He hasn't given it any oxygen whatsoever. And he's only spoken. I couldn't hazard a guess. I didn't drop him a text to get a comment on this, but I'm sure God only knows how many journalists dropped him a message to get a comment on, you know, the whole situation or whatever in the past 2 or 3 months. He's waited until the Dr. McKenna Cup launch. He said this, it's out there everywhere. That's kind of that. It'll be, by the time 2024 rolls around, I'll put you this way, he won't be quoting and giving any more oxygen to it anyway. He's kind of nipped it in the bud fairly well now. As regards whether anybody has said it to him, I'm sure a few have. I'm sure his family maybe have even said it to him. But I suppose you'd be brave enough kind of to say it to him too. You'd need to know him fairly well as a friend or someone around the village or whatever to actually say it to him. But I'd be amazed if he hasn't got a couple of comments or sly little digs or whatever. That's the world we live in the GA. Like, people love that. You meet a fella and he's a little smile on his face and you know what's coming from 50 yards away. Like, so I'd be very surprised if he hasn't got a bit of that.
What I'm waiting to see is if Derry end up playing Tyrone, there's a really close game a la Galway, Kilkenny in the handshake, Cody versus Shefflin game. And then everyone will have, let's say Tyrone beat Derry by a point in contentious circumstances. It'll be all eyes on Mickey Hart on the handshake after that game.
Yeah, I don't think he, maybe foolish is not the right word, but what Brian Cody did gave that scenario oxygen that people didn't even realise it needed. Do you know what I mean? It gave it a ridiculous amount of oxygen. Then after the Leinster final, it was even bigger. I don't think Mickey Hart would allow that to happen. Definitely not. Yeah,
and the final story then before we finish up. Derek Ling won't have Alan Murphy or Conor Brown next year. Conor Brown has been in Australia, so he's not going to be back, and Alan Murphy is out as well. So that's digging into his options a little bit more. So Derek Ling is going to have to, I mean, we thought that the under-20s that won the All-Ireland would provide a few solutions in 2023, but that didn't really happen. We didn't really see much of those. So he probably will really have to try and pull a few lads out of that this year.
Yeah, again, like you say, like Alan Murphy, maybe he's not a marquee name. He came on the last 2 All-Ireland finals. Conor Brown played in the 19 and 22 finals. him not being involved with Kilkenny for a second year will make it tough for him to, it will make it tough for him to come back and make an impact if it is in the third year or the fourth year. You know what I mean? I believe Richie Latty's not coming back either. Which same scenario again makes it very, very difficult to see will he be back at all. A good few of those under 20s will be kind of thrown in, but I'd be worried about Kilkenny's depth now. Like you're just chipping away at lads that came in and made it. Like Alan Murphy mightn't have started that many games, but he came into a fair few games and made a decent impact and was very, very solid. And from being around club setups as well in particular, that guy that can come in for the last 15-20 minutes and you have a fair idea what you're going to get out of him, they're kind of priceless. And now I'd say they're going into the unknown a bit. Richie Hogan gone. Obviously Pádraig Walsh gone as well. Yeah, depth is definitely not as strong, and I say he's going to have to throw in with Charlie Carter on the show a couple of weeks ago, obviously, and he was just saying that Derek has a decision to make, and like he thinks he needs to throw in these young fellas, and if it doesn't stick straight away, it doesn't stick, but he needs to kind of build a new team now and build a new squad now. And while there was a lot of carryover from the Cody era in 23, I'd say you're going to see a fair degree in change in 2024 because he kind of has to build something new now. Do you know what I mean? What was built previous was there and was fairly tried and tested. There's kind of cracks in the foundation of that now, or their lads gone, so he kind of think he needs to build something new.
Well, realistically, the team that went before couldn't win an All-Ireland in 9 years. So there's no suggestion that those continuing to get older is going. So that it's not. He has to break it up because that team isn't going to win an All-Ireland.
I'd agree with you. Yeah, well, they haven't won an All-Ireland, so yeah, if he wants to win an All-Ireland, sometimes you have to make hard decisions and maybe place trust in a lot of these young fellas, whether they're good enough to win All-Ireland. I suppose that remains to be seen, but you won't find out unless you give them a go.
And of course, next year we're looking at a 10 in a row from Kilkenny and a 20 in a row from Cork. So it's a big year for all of us that are, Richard Hogan says panel is going to be top loaded with Thomastown players. Paddy Langton of Gorn is one who might get some league time. But Richard Hogan says Ballyhale getting a break might help Kilkenny this season. Interesting to see if any O'Loughlin Gael forwards can break into the setup. I think that's a very interesting point actually about the Ballyhale lads.
Yeah, I think Owen Wall has been called in, and I think David Fogarty and Jordan Malloy have been called in as well. Conor Heary was in there last year, so he's obviously presumed he's going to be in there again. But he played cornerback against Tip in the league, so I presume they're looking at him. I'd imagine they're looking at him as a forward. They don't have that type of player. They haven't got that type of player really. That real athletic ball winner, ball carrier, score taker, creator. I'd definitely be giving him a very, very good show in the league and beyond.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'll just quickly read out some other fixtures there. If you want to drop off, you can, Michael. I know you're on the way to do the Christmas shopping.
Cheers, Shano. Lots of presents to be got with very little money to get them with. Good luck.
Yeah. Right. Good luck to you. So just the other games that are going to be played this weekend in ladies club football, Kilkerran Clonburner against Ballymacarbery in the All-Ireland ladies final. The intermediate final, then Ballinamore Sean O'Heslins against Glanmire. In the junior final, you're going to see Clare Morris of Mayo against O'Donovan Rossa of Cork. Then in Camogie, Sarsfields of Galway will meet Kilkenny champions Dixborough. Intermediate final sees Clonmorris of Kerry against Afina of Meath. And the junior final, Athleague of Roscommon will meet Grainmore of Armagh. So I think that's pretty much it from the show this weekend. Keep the comments coming in after the fact as well. A lot of hurlings in management will have to win in All-Ireland next year. Pressure on Henry, Ling and Lohan, says PWell74. Yeah, let us know your thoughts. Is that the case? By the way, if you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. So it's been a big old show yet again. And we'll be back again next Monday to review another huge weekend of action. Chat to you then.